So if you're anything like me, you spend way too many hours thinking about work. During lunch, at the party, in the park, before you go to sleep, instead of an actual sleep. No matter what we do, this one unfinished report will keep bugging us until tomorrow we will finally send it out. And that's just the worst. We'd love to spend this energy on something actually productive, but we just cannot stop thinking about work. We are responsible people and we care about what we do. Does it mean that to finally get some rest, we have to stop caring altogether? Well, not exactly. And the solution to it has two parts. And by the way, I'm Elena. I teach managers how to be good managers, including how to handle the pressure of leadership positions without hopefully turning into a jerk that everyone hates. Now, the question is why we cannot disconnect. And the first part of the answer is hidden in our brain. So sometimes when we start getting burned out or we start feeling that we're hating our job, often it has nothing to do with the job itself. Yeah, some jobs are objectively crappy, and doesn't matter from which angle you look at it, but often it is the inability to disconnect after work that spoils everything. And you can have the best job ever, the job of your life, but if you think about it 24/7, it will drive anyone nuts. Also, when we work, we are often simply busy. So we have constant social interactions, messages, meetings, connects, and all of that. Because of all of these distractions, our brains sometimes struggle to properly process everything that is happening with us during the work while we're actually at work. We basically cannot process this while we're still there. So our brain does that after we close our laptop. But here's the thing. Every time we start thinking about work outside of work, especially if we think about a task that we didn't finish or maybe something unpleasant that happened to us during the day, it activates a stress response in our brain. So it feels like the situation is now, although that's not the case. It's just our brain trying to react in the way that it finds the most helpful. But we cannot explain our brain that go in circles and thinking about all of these work situations when you are not there is unproductive. It's just involuntary. This is important. Thinking about an unfinished task for our brain feels urgent, but it is harmful, while our brain thinks it's helpful. So I was actually pleasantly surprised to find out that there is a lot of research about how we think about work when we are not at work. And in a nutshell, kind of obvious, but when we do that, it does not allow us to rest. So what do we do about it? And the solution to it is hidden in creating different types of psychological and physical boundaries. One of the pretty physical things that you can do is, for example, to have a separate dedicated working space/zone where you only work there, and when you leave, you stop working. It may feel like something minor, but it's actually incredibly important because it all comes to us fighting our impulsive brain's responses. So things like that send our brain signals that the work is over and something else starts. So if you work from home, especially if you work from home, also things help like changing your clothes. So for example, you stopped working, then you go and you change into something else, or changing the lights, or changing the background music if you use the background music. Do not underestimate the impact of it, because if all of this used consistently, it helps our brain to switch to one mode to another much more effortlessly, and working thoughts will not even pop up in your brain that often. So there is a proven classic of not installing your working apps at your personal phone. I used to have working email and messenger on my personal phone actually many years ago, but I don't do that. And this was one of the most impactful things that helped me to properly disconnect from my work after I'm done. It was kind of painful in the beginning, but the result was so worth it. And if for some reason you cannot do that, you need to have very strict rules about switching off. So I think you can even set in your phone like turning off notifications for a certain period of time during the day to schedule it. So definitely use something like that for nothing to even a little bit pop up and bother you when you're not working. Now, another thing that you can do is physical exercise, and physical exercise straight after work. And I'm telling you, like, I know so many people who absolutely swear by it. I myself don't do it that often, but what I heard is that if after work you give your body an exercise, you kind of cannot think of anything else if you're physically exhausted enough. And especially if it's a sport that has any social elements, it kind of makes you occupied to an extent that even if you would want to think about work, you would not be able to. But sometimes all of that is not enough. Or it's better to say, if we do that, we maybe can disconnect, but we feel very guilty about it. Like, how dare I sleep at night when my quarterly plan is not achieved yet? Boundaries can sometimes feel like we're just avoiding the problem. Like we're just closing our eyes at something that will bite us tomorrow. And for that, we're having psychological boundaries. First and foremost, when we think about work, when we're not at work, what type of thoughts do we usually have? For many people, it is something like, oh my God, I need to create this report because it is very urgent and I haven't done it today because I was too distracted. And if you look at it, it is a pretty anxious thought actually. But the good thing is that it is in our power to reformat it a little bit because we have power over how do we formulate thoughts in our mind. So what if I ask you to replace it with a little bit different one? Something like, okay, so there is a report that I need to do, it's very important, and here is when I will create it. Do you see the difference between those two? One is more abstract, panic, anxiety, bubble, and the other one is a more problem-solving mode. Yes, there is something, and this is when I will take care of it. When you have these intrusive thoughts, I actually want for you to stop, sometimes maybe write it down and literally reformulate it from this abstract panic mode to a problem-solving mode. Here's the thing. Problems are tangible and our brains are actually very good at solving problems and working and dealing with tangible things. We just need to help it, and we do it by reformulating the intrusive thoughts into a problem-focused statement. Now we feel less guilty because it's not that we're ignoring the problem, but we're actually having a plan on when will we deal with that. There are two more things when it comes to the psychological boundaries bucket that I personally very much believe in. And the first one is, I think we need to kind of show certain compassion to ourselves because everyone thinks about work outside work. This is a problem that all of us experience. And it's just how our brain operates. It's not our fault that we're doing that. So I think accepting to a certain extent that this is just a human nature and don't beating yourself up. If you sometimes struggle to control this constant work-related thoughts and buzz in your head is very important. We are the first people to show this compassion to ourselves. And the second thing is that I believe we need to all accept that sometimes overwork is glorified, and sometimes we just have toxic managers who push us to think about work 24/7, and if we don't do that, we feel guilty about it, although all of it is unjustifiable in the first place. But that's not all. And the second half of a solution is hidden in a way that we manage our teams. I remember when I used to lead a team of 20, some of my reports were already managing their small teams, and it was so stressful. I could not sleep. I had so many things on my mind at the same time that it would literally drive me crazy. And even my best practices on creating these psychological and physical boundaries did not help. And when I was reflecting on that, I realized that I actually could not rely on my team. When I would give them a task to do something, I would already imagine how I will need to fix it after they will deliver. And it happened. I had to do that. The thing is, we need strong teams that does not require micromanagement to have a peace of mind. And in my opinion, this is one of the hardest things in leadership, in general, because we tend to punish people for doing a bad job, hoping that the next time they will do better out of fear of punishment. And as managers, we can get irritated and we're not actually asking them, okay, what can we do to help them to get better at something? So when we go for this more dominant kind of punishing style, people can get anxious, and in a short term, they can indeed show you a better result because they will feel more motivated because they are afraid of the punishment. But in the long term, good experts will actually leave this environment as soon as they can, because this type of team culture is not about trust and not about mutual respect. Our teams will not go an extra mile for us if they will know that we will not go this extra mile for them. And the cycle starts with managers, not with employees. There is a practical, step-by-step way to make your team more reliable. And I made a video about a 5-step framework on how to finally delegate to your team with a peace of mind. So check it out if you like. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you there.